Endometriosis is a debilitating condition that affects millions of women worldwide. In Barbados, lots of women accept it as a part of life. Many of them go to work, take care of their families, and go about their daily lives while suffering in silence. There are no local statistics on the condition, but it is believed to affect 1 in 10 women globally. We'll take a look at some of their stories, how they cope, and what are some of the treatment options available. But first, exactly what is endometriosis?
Endometriosis is really, it's a condition, it's often painful disorder in which the tissue that normally lines the womb, which is called the endometrium, actually is growing outside the womb. Okay, so we call the womb the uterus. This is the uterus here. This is where baby develops and grows for 9 months until it passes through the birth canal. These are your tubes, and these are your ovaries. Your ovaries is what produces your eggs and produces your hormones on a daily basis, before you go through menopause, that is. So the lining of the womb, or the lining of the uterus, is called the endometrium. This is what cries every month when you do not conceive. I use that analogy because, you know, when you get your period, it's basically a lack of you being able to conceive that month. Okay, it's a normal physiological process. Now, endometriosis is when this lining of the womb actually grows on the outside. It can grow on the outside of the walls of the uterus, it can grow into the vagina, it can grow onto the ovaries, it can grow onto the tubes. So every month when you bleed, that blood passes through the birth canal and comes out as your menstrual effluent. But when you bleed outside the womb, that blood has nowhere to go. So what happens? It causes an inflammatory reaction. It causes a buildup of blood, which can lead to all the symptoms of endometriosis. So the key is to see where it is located, and that's why the symptoms can vary. If you have endometriosis on the ovary, it can bleed every month and develop these things called chocolate cysts or endometriomas. If you have endometriosis on the tube, it can cause scar tissue, and that can lead to challenges with conceiving and subfertility. If it bleeds by the vagina and forms scar tissue there, it can lead to painful intercourse. If it forms on the outside here, it can actually lead to your uterus being fixed and you're getting other symptoms related to your bowel movements, to passing water. So all depending on where. I've actually seen patients with endometriotic tissue at their navel, in their lungs. So what happens on a monthly basis, they may bleed from their navel, or they develop fluid on their lungs every month when they get a period. So it all depends on what stage it is at and where it is located, and then that would dictate the symptoms that they may present with.
Sometimes it takes years before a woman receives a diagnosis because she believes periods are supposed to be painful. Plus, endometriosis shares symptoms with other conditions. Doctors use a procedure called laparoscopy to diagnose endometriosis. They use a thin, lighted tube put through a cut or incision in the belly to look at the abdominal or female pelvic organs. After diagnosis, there are a number of treatment options.
You know, when you have a problem, it's always easy to say, remove it. To remove it, you require surgery. But surgery is not the solution for everything. If a patient is having painful periods, then the best treatment option for her will be to control the pain. So they will be placed on analgesics or simply painkillers, okay, at the time of their periods, and most times that helps and that works. So if you have painful periods, treat the painful periods, you treat the problems that endometriosis causes. Sometimes we give hormonal medication because when we give something like the pill, it controls your periods. So people who have heavy periods and they go on the pill, they realize their periods become lighter, right? That is the lining shedding every month. But if I put you on hormonal medication, not only do I make the lining thinner and you shed less, you actually bleed less outside the uterus. So there's less inflammatory reaction, there are less symptoms. So placing the woman on a hormonal contraceptive may actually improve all their symptoms with regards to painful periods. Sometimes we can even stop the periods. So if you don't bleed every month, you don't bleed outside the uterus every month, you don't get pain every month. And endometriosis, sometimes when you shut it down for a prolonged period of time, it dries out. So you know how if I stop your periods for 9 months or 10 months and I stop the medication, they will come back? With endometriosis, if you stop the period, you may actually dry up the endometriosis on the outside so the patient has no more symptoms after. There are many stages of endometriosis. There's the mild, the stage 1, and there's stage 4. And the symptoms don't necessarily relate to the stage, right? It's not like how when you have cancer, you know, stage 4 is far gone. You may have somebody with stage 4, meaning they have endometriosis all over the pelvis and outside, but they don't have much symptoms. So I think the key with the treatment of endometriosis is treating what is troubling the lady. So if she has problems in conceiving, I think tackling that is the key. You know, well, let's because it can present in many ways.
Crystal Carew has had painful periods from the time she was 8 years old, but was only diagnosed with endometriosis in 2007. She also received a double whammy when doctors told her in 2016 that she had polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. PCOS is a hormonal disorder in women characterized by enlarged ovaries containing numerous small, painless cysts, excessive hair growth, and acne. It may also cause infertility.
I always had pain, you know, throughout my cycle and stuff. I had my cycle from age 8, and my mom didn't think that it was, you know, okay to have such bad pains and, you know, throwing up and everything. I would miss school a lot, and then, you know, running to and fro from doctors a lot, and it wasn't something that was normal, and, you know, for a girl to be in so much pain. So my mom just took me to the doctor, and that's when I found out I had ovarian cysts. When I was diagnosed with endometriosis in 2007, it was by luck and a chance. I went on a cruise and blacked out, and one of my friends, you know, after I was taken to the hospital, one of my friends called her doctor, and he came to the hospital to look at me. And then, you know, I was complaining about pains in my stomach region and stuff. And although I wasn't on my cycle, I was still having these really, really bad pains, and it was excruciating. He did an ultrasound, and that's when he found, you know, chocolate cysts. That's what they call cysts that are filled with blood. And he referred me to come and get a laparoscopy, where they would insert a camera in my navel and then do ultrasound to see if I had endometriosis. And it turns out that I had endometriosis.
The pain associated with endometriosis can affect a woman's level of productivity. Crystal, a supervisor at Coffee Bean, is in pain practically every day. Fortunately for her, she has a very understanding boss.
When I'm at work, I'm constantly moving, and then when the girls know that, you know, I'm taking a break, they know that I'm in pain. Sometimes I just crouch over and I'm like, I can't take it anymore. Sometimes I miss work. Not that I want to, but I have no, you know, no choice, and I don't want to come work and then can't, you know, be productive. So my boss understands, you know, how I feel, because when I was diagnosed, I was only like 3 years into Coffee Bean. This is my 10th year, and yeah, and she's pretty understanding. I done like 1 million ultrasounds, 1 million tests, and, you know, that takes me away from my job. It takes me away from, you know, my chores at home and what I love to do. But I cope. I cope really well.
Endometriosis has a high health cost, which is driven by the need for women to treat their pain. A study conducted by the World Endometriosis Research Foundation in 2012, called the Endo study, showed that endometriosis cost the average woman in Europe over €9,500 a year in medical expenses, which translates to just over 21,500 Barbados dollars. This breaks down to an average of just over €6,200 lost in work productivity and an average €3,100 for direct healthcare costs. In other words, the cost of inability to work due to symptoms is twice that of direct health costs.
it is very, very costly, and it is, you know, if you are not saving for something, and then you have, you know, all of these bills and stuff, you like, where do I turn to get these funds? But I manage, I have health insurance and stuff, which I would suggest everybody have. I have the health insurance, which helps, but you know, obviously you don't get that back till like after, but I tend to put change down for a rainy day, and it's not a rainy day that I can splurge, it's a rainy day just in case something bad happens. Medical bills, like ultrasound can run you from like $200 to like $400. I've spent like $750 in one day at the doctor. And that, well, that's the least I've probably spent in a while. Sometimes I will spend like $2,000 for procedures and that type of thing. And it's not that you want to spend your money, but you have no choice because you don't want that something else is going wrong and you don't know. So I tend to, people say I like the doctor, but it's not that I like the doctor, I like to find out what is going on with me. You know, so I tend to be at the doctor quite a bit. Yes.
Medication is a big contributor to the cost of endometriosis.
I've been on countless amount of medication from the time I was 8 years old. I'm 30 now, going on 31. So, you know, the amount of medication that I've had in my lifetime is tremendous. And it is not that I want to take them, because sometimes I feel to, you know, take medication, but then I don't want the side effects, because some of them, the side effects are pretty bad, and then if I'm not throwing up, sometimes I throw up blood. Every time I go on something, it's something different.
The study showed that the cost of endometriosis is similar to that of diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and Crohn's disease. However, it did not receive as much research or investment.
She's sick again? She's always absent from work.
Oh my gosh, she's just so dramatic.
Everybody gets a period. What's the big deal? She's just lazy.
Barbadian women with the condition can access a wealth of information, resources, and support from local entities like the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS. Julia Mandeville, a science teacher, is one of the founding members of the association, and she also has endometriosis.
I was diagnosed in 2014 with endometriosis, and at that time I did some looking around and I saw that there was no organization, no national organization for endometriosis in Barbados, and I was upset. And I said, well, that can't work because I'm sure I'm not the only one with the condition. And so from 2014, I was basically planning to start this association so that women such like myself would have a voice and would have a place to share information.
Julia experienced painful periods all her life, but thought it was normal.
So I was experiencing pain in my cycle from the time I've had a cycle, but then I was always met with, that's normal. So some people will experience more pain than others. And so I kind of chalked it up to, oh, that's my lot in life, that I will have to deal with this pain for the rest of my life. What had happened was in 2013, not only was there the pain during the period, but before and after the cycle, I was getting pains as well, like severe sharp pains, and I thought it was something wrong with my kidneys because of where the pain was located. And then I found, no, I'm also getting these ovarian cysts that are either rupturing or getting ready to rupture, and that's what's causing me the pain. And so that, in 2013 then, was another thing to add on. Also, when I had an ultrasound because of the cysts, I was told that one of my ovaries was like really attached to my uterus, and that was another indicating factor there. And so after I had, I think, a really bad episode with the cysts, my doctor and I sat, and he's like, okay, so maybe you might have this condition. It was a relief because it was like, okay, finally I'm not crazy. I'm not just whining because I can't handle pain, my pain threshold. It has nothing to do with that. It was a relief to know that there is the condition and it does have a name. But at the same time, when I found out that it's progressive, it's chronic, no one knows what causes it, and there's no cure, it was like, well, I kind of back where I started from. I know I can give it a name, but now what?
Besides emotional support, the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS offers a number of benefits to members, including special rates and discounts with selected businesses and professionals.
We are not doctors, we're not offering any medical advice whatsoever. We want to work in conjunction with the medical practitioners in Barbados to help with facilitating the improvement of the quality of life of individuals that have the conditions.
Infertility is one of the symptoms of endometriosis, and for women who want to conceive, it is one of the most difficult.
If it causes problems with conceiving, then we may have to explore using assisted reproductive techniques, things like IVF. And usually pregnancy makes endometriosis better. You don't think about it, but what happens when you get pregnant, you don't have a period for a minimum of 9 months. So the lining on the outside doesn't get stimulated, it can dry up. And not only that, when you're pregnant, the uterus expands. So if there are any scar tissue or an adhesion, it's like breaking free.
Abdominal adhesions are bands of fibrous tissue that causes organs in the abdominal cavity to stick together. It is also known as frozen pelvis.
So women who have endometriosis, once they conceive, you find after that their symptoms improve significantly.
Julia, who wants to have children one day, knows that she might be facing an uphill battle in trying to get pregnant.
I myself had to come to terms with the fact that I might have issues getting pregnant naturally. And I'm fine with that. And I've had discussions with my husband, and he's okay, he's been very supportive. I think one thing society needs to know is that every woman can't just get pregnant automatically. It really isn't how it seems in the movies or whatever. For some women, it is very difficult because we have conditions, underlying conditions that, again, we don't talk about, but they are out there. The same way getting pregnant can be difficult. There are people that have a lot of miscarriages, so they might get pregnant, but for the pregnancy to progress, that might be difficult too. And so for me personally, well, I'm surrounded by children all the time, so I guess that kind of fulfills that, just being around children. I do want to be a mother eventually, but I've also kind of acknowledged that I might have to try alternative options. I might have to do assisted reproductive technology, and that's fine. I might have to adopt, and that's fine. I'm fine either way. So I always say, if I'm not pregnant, no, if I get pregnant, I won't be upset. If I'm not pregnant, I won't be sad, because either way, I am okay with whatever hand I'm dealt with. Yeah.
She hopes that her association will help dispel some of the misconceptions surrounding women with the condition.
We want to work. It's not as though we don't want to do the work we do, but it's a fact that with the condition, you might have an issue with your immune system. Because endometriosis, I know for sure, there's a link with that and inflammation in your body. And so if your body is constantly fighting against itself, what can you do at that point in time? Because obviously you're going to be tired, you're going to be fatigued. And so that's why we're trying to raise awareness of the condition, so people understand that when you have these conditions, you're really not trying to shirk work, you're not trying to be irresponsible. I know for sure myself, I like to work, I like to work hard, but at the same point in time, we just need the understanding that maybe today might not be the day, and we just want people to know that we have the condition, we do have the condition. We don't want pity, we just want understanding. That's all we want, understanding, and we want to do our work, and we want to do our work well.
Endometriosis does not discriminate. It affects women from all walks of life.
I was diagnosed with endometriosis 3 years ago when I went to India to get my treatment for my polycystic ovaries. And that was when I found out, and I didn't know much about it. And because of my short time, I had to come back to Barbados to do my research and then to start my treatment. Before I was diagnosed with endometriosis, I was actually getting a lot of yeast infection and painful sex, and after I was diagnosed, that's when I realized that these were the two symptoms of endometriosis. My good days are the best days, and then when I have my bad days, it's just days like I want to sleep in bed and don't come out. We have painful joint pains. I have a really bad backache, but I was told that it's due to endometriosis. And it is something that affects me, but hopefully I will conceive one day.
Stephanie Berenice, a video blogger, agreed to share her story with us. She described the pain she endures each month.
I start crying because the pain is so unbearable, and the way I explain it is the pain is worse than labor. It's like a sharp knife pain. Someone is sticking a knife in you, turning it, and then releasing it a little bit and then hitting you again. Endometriosis can't kill you, but the pain that you get while you're having a flare-up can make you think of doing something wrong. So you won't feel the pain anymore. Through every flare-up, I'm just like, how am I getting through this? How am I getting by? I have been isolated for a very long time. I've talked about it openly, but I've never gotten within groups or other women that suffer from my same illness, and I think it's time to hear their stories, and I think it's time to come together, and I think it's time to find a cure.
Yoga is believed to help with some of the symptoms associated with endometriosis. Jasmine Evelyn, Vice President of the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS, is also a registered yoga teacher and pelvic health physiotherapist. I was privy to a one-on-one session where she demonstrated how yoga can help relieve endometriosis pain.
Inhale to lift our arms up. And what's happening here, we're getting a gentle stretch for the hip flexors, these. All right, exhale, take your hands down. We're gonna walk both hands to the inside of our right leg. Good. We're gonna walk our right foot forward and just take your hips down to the mat. So just a gentle little stretch here for the front of your left hip, and perhaps you feel something at the back of your, good. So for women who have endometriosis, their hip flexors and their hamstrings get really tight. So this is really good to help them stretch out. They also tend to have trigger points as well, like areas of tension in these muscles that cause additional pain. So this is good to really stretch these muscles. As you exhale, you're gonna take a half split. All right, don't get scared. You're gonna straighten the front leg and just take a gentle fold. And usually you want these flows to be nice and gentle and nice and slow. Many times I see women who have pelvic pain as a result of endometriosis. Usually it's definitely pelvic pain, and often when they have pain with sex as well, because their pelvic floor often becomes very tight because of prolonged pain. I don't like to use the word chronic, but persistent pain. And if we think about pain, the natural response to pain is to become very tight, is the natural response. And if you are going through pain every month for years and years, then your muscles then become used to that position, used to that posture. And so part of my job is to help them to relax their pelvic floor through physiotherapy and also through yoga. And yoga is usually the mode of exercise I use in my practice, just to help with pain relief and to help with improving their quality of life.
Jasmine organizes classes that cater specifically to women with endometriosis. She has seen their symptoms improve after administering yoga.
Very often, women then tend to have less painful periods. Sometimes women come to me and they're having pain. I've had one person, she had pain 2 weeks before her period, then the week of her period. And if you think about that, that's 3 weeks, that's almost the entire month. So after doing yoga, I gave her a home exercise program, and she would do that. And then after they get used to the program, we'll taper off the treatment, and then she was able to say that her pain was reduced, and she was able to even you know, enjoy life more in terms of being able to go to town and do other things instead of being stuck at home.
Just as bad as the physical pain is the mental and emotional stress associated with the condition.
So endometriosis is a chronic illness, and when we look at chronic illnesses, we look at the trifold effect that they have on a woman's mental health. So we look at the psychological, so how a woman's thoughts are affected. We look at the emotional, how their feelings are affected by the illness, and then we look at the social, so how their behavior is affected and how they interact with persons, you know, in their surroundings. So when we look at the psychological, endometriosis can affect a woman's fertility. So if a woman is infertile, she now has these thoughts of perhaps she's less of a woman, or she may have feelings like, you know, I'm not matching up to someone's standards or to society's standards. Persons may look at her also as, you know, oh, you can't have children, oh goodness. So it causes a lot of stress and anguish for individuals, right?
A woman with the condition may become depressed or even suicidal.
Endometriosis is a disorder that can affect a woman's social well-being. Right? We find because they may not be feeling so well physically, they may want to withdraw from friends or colleagues who they would normally want to, you know, go out with. And chronic illnesses are usually associated with 2 or 3 times the cases of depression and anxiety. So endometriosis tends to affect females in a way that they succumb to depression or to anxiety, and this further debilitates the condition for them because depression and anxiety are linked to stress. And stress then can exacerbate both the physical symptoms and the mental symptoms.
Ms. Patrick Drakes believes that employers need to be educated about how endometriosis affects females in the workplace.
If I'm in pain, I'm really not concentrating on what is happening. If I feel like people think that I am not as capable of an employee because I'm not coming to work as often, or I seem to be, I'm always late, I'm always missing, or I'm always like hunched over, I'm withdrawn, right? This all can affect my productivity because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not measuring up, you know, and I'm affected.
Ms. Patrick Drakes addressed the stigma attached to mental health. She says persons should just be as comfortable visiting their mental health practitioner as they are visiting their medical doctor.
Our society, the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS, we have a doctor, a medical practitioner on board. There's also a counseling psychologist, we have a physiotherapist, and there are a number of psychologists practicing within the island. The Barbados Society of Psychologists has a full directory that persons may have access to if they requested it, if they needed it. Or you can go to your general practitioner and say, you know what, I believe that I need some mental health assistance, and they will be able to direct you further on who they may recommend.
Yes, we do see in Barbados a lot of cases of endometriosis. I don't think it's any more than it is internationally, and I'm glad that the month of March is now being highlighted as an endometriosis awareness month. There's a lot of activity. There are 2 foundations out there who are trying to raise awareness about endometriosis, and not only does it raise awareness, it provides a network of people who can share their stories with each other, show support for each other, because it's a very debilitating condition. I mean, you get periods every month. You know, men don't have to deal with this, but you know, being debilitated to the extent where you're living on painkillers to function on a monthly basis, and then obviously the challenges in conceiving, you know, and then having to undergo surgery for it. So these are things that affect the society, affect the family around that woman who is undergoing pain, her children, her spouse, her workplace, you know. So it's very good that Barbados has now come on stream, bringing awareness to endometriosis.
So Crystal, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. For more information, check out the website of the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS at endoandpcosbb.com or email
at endoassociationofbarbados@gmail.com. Also, our Facebook page, EndoFacts.
There is also the Katrina Endometriosis Fund Association. You can also check them out on Facebook. Hopefully, we were able to shed some light on endometriosis for all those affected by the condition. I'm Melissa Rollock. Thanks for joining us.
Here we're going to come into a Sphinx pose. So Sphinx pose, we take our elbows just under our shoulders.